Dorohedoro is a seinen manga series by the author Q Hayashida, known for its dark themes, bold artwork, and over-the-top graphic content. While Dorohedoro is a seinen manga found within the likes of Berserk and Vagabond, it has an entirely different approach to its more mature subject matter. I believe the world of Dorohedoro is rooted within comedy, where the gruesome, disfigured bodies are comedic, where devils are bored gods just having fun with their powers, and how the hardships of living in this world are so beyond rough that you can't help but laugh at it all. And this isn't to say that Dorohedoro's story is lacking in any serious plot or has any lack of value. What I mean by when I say Dorohedoro is rooted in comedy, it's that the series within itself isn't comedic, but the uncomfortable nature of it all just makes you laugh as you would in real life when being faced with an uncomfortable situation. So with that, the subject of today's video is the dark comedy of Dorohedoro. To start, I want to talk about the beauty of Dorohedoro's disgusting world and how it plays a huge part as to why the reader can get comfy with its subject matter as well as have a good time with it. It's really crazy how Hayashida can present almost anything outerworldly in this story and just kind of have it work, you know? She does a great job of making all these weird concepts seem familiar and easy to grasp. The two main worlds that you'll see in Dorohedoro are 1, the Whole, and 2, the Magic Users world, where the Whole is hosted by humans and the latter, the Magic Users realm, is hosted by sorcerers. Sorcerers, while appearing human, are actually their own species separate from humans, created from the first ever devil Chidorama. It's important to note this because sorcerers constantly visit the Whole to experiment on humans as they see them as kind of like an inferior race. And this main plot point is kind of where all the body horror of the series comes into play, as you'll see people get turned into bugs, or have mushroom magic used on someone, or someone get turned into a meat pie and get eaten. The Whole is called the Whole, well, because there's a giant hole there. I know, surprising. It's very industrial and has this scrapyard look with every human just fighting to survive, so most of the people just keep to themselves. As opposed to the sorcerer realm where it's close to Earth, but not really, as it's mainly just gothic architecture, and they do have more advanced technology like lights and stuff, but it's magic fueled. And surprisingly, you'll find that the Whole is a more friendly place to be in, aside from the sorcerers coming in, because with the magic user realm, it is a lot bigger of an area. So you'll have groups like the Cross Eyes, who are sorcerers that can't produce smoke, aka they can't do magic. There's some really funny looking people that inhabit these worlds. In the Whole, you'll just have, again, like these disfigured humans, or you'll have people with just like an octopus head, or you'll have this very funny and iconic looking fashion. It's almost like Wastelander rebel type punk coded like aesthetics going on here. And the sorcerers too got their weird quirks, you know. Everyone in the sorcerer realm wears some sort of mask, and it's very unique to the series where everyone is distinguished based on their mask that they have. The environment art is drop dead gorgeous, and it's really captivating. And even in the sorcerer realm, you'll see these goofy looking statues of devils that are just implanting themselves into these societies. Or you'll see the district of where head of family and great sorcerer N just completely mushroom nuked a whole sector of the sorcerer realm. There are a lot of interesting landmarks and locations in Dorohedoro, and once you actually find out the kind of story behind it, you just end up laughing because of how crazy and absurd these places came to be. I mean, one of my favorite locations is probably the sorcerer school, just because of Hayashida's take on how you would portray a school even in a world like this. Like, what would they be teaching? How do you fit a cafeteria in here? And it's just really funny seeing the bizarre ways that it's translated from our world but also not. The magic of Dorohedoro is pretty unique, where your body produces this smoke, and this smoke is what's used to cast your magic. The amount of smoke you can produce directly correlates with how strong you are as a sorcerer. This unique system leads to, well, unique magic, which brings me to my first point. The combat in Dorohedoro is realistic yet super goofy, with not only just the magic, but it's hand-to-hand combat as well. There are tons of instances of bodies bending the way they shouldn't, whole entire arms and limbs being chopped off, heads being bashed in. It's just so cartoonified to the point where it doesn't even feel like gore anymore. The absurdity is captured so well within its artwork, as every little detail of how the magic would affect a person is right on display. You have Shin, for instance, who his whole body was diced up and stitched back together, and he's just this mass of just stitched together limbs just following along the surface area of his whole body. It's going to such extremes that you just can't help but appreciate the lengths that Hayashida will go for all of the concepts in her characters and the action within it. You're not throwing just normal punches or wielding knives. You were literally putting a whole entire crater into somebody when you punch them, or shoving your hand through their ribcage, or when you're wielding a knife, you're chopping whole fingers off in one slice. The artwork is pretty realistic and grounded, but just the way that it's portrayed just almost kind of makes you stomach it a little easier. Characters die a lot in Dorohedoro, but there's a lot of ways to bring characters back, so the story isn't afraid to show really cruel ways of putting these characters in their final moments. But again, bringing someone back to life isn't such an easy thing, and it's only used sparingly to keep the story from lacking in consequences. I mean, you have Ebisu, who dies so often in this series, it's just kind of a running gag at this point. People will probably take offense with the way that lives are dealt with in Dorohedoro, as either they'll be used for comedic bits or just thrown away for a scene. The regard to human life, or sorcerer life as well, is just non-existent. But you gotta remember that this is a world built up and ran by literal devils. It only makes sense for the story and the world, and again, it's fiction. So it's what makes the story so unique, as there's nothing else really like it, the way they handle life and death in the story. A lot of characters end up like how Shin and Noe are before they met each other. When they're alone and by themselves, they don't see really a point to living. They're indifferent to making an action upon the world until they've met each other. And now that they have each other, there's actual reason for them to live. That's why a lot of the situations we see in Dorohedoro is with groups of people, and why you'll never see people really acting alone, because this is a cruel world to be alone in. When you finally find people to confide with, only then can you perceive the world with a lens of comedy added to it. For majority of En's life before he founded his family, he had one of the cruelest backstories, was put into pure torture, but then once he's escaped that and has been able to bring people into his life, then he could finally loosen up, then he could change and laugh a little. Now I want to talk about one of my favorite story beats from Dorohedoro that just had me dying laughing. The scene I'm talking about revolves around the Cross Eyes finally getting back to their home and confronting the landlady. The Cross-Eye members are always late with their payments, to the point where I think they're 5 months overdue on their rent, but the only reason the landlady is fine with this is because she's really into Ushi Shimada and is super lenient with the lateness fees. The whole time they're traveling, they have Risu with them, and during this part, Risu and Dokuga end up getting into a spat and start fighting each other inside. And then one of Risu's cursed spikes end up going astray and killing the landlady. Seeing Dokuga remorseful next to her while Seiji and Tone are just jumping up and down happy that they're, in quote, homeowners now. It's like utterly ridiculous. You can't make this up. They don't even scoff or even care about what happened to the landlady. They end up going to the landlady's mansion and try to make it look like there was an accident or some sort of scene that made it look like she died on her own. They end up trying to make it look like she hung herself, but in the process, she is this massive fat lady, and they are struggling to even carry her body, let alone tie a noose around her neck and hold that up. So it ends up snapping the rope, and it ends up falling on Dokuga as he's trying to hold her up, but then her body falls and splats onto the ground. All of these events and the dialogue and them struggling to fake her death is funny enough as is, but then a parasite bursts out of her stomach and starts attacking them. It is so disgusting seeing this giant parasite just start bursting out of her chest, because now that she's dead, it can't really feed off her anymore, and it was supposed to be like a diet worm to kind of like help her trim fat. And this is just like the most traumatic experience for the boys here, but it's just, again, like I'm just dying and I'm in tears reading all these events play out. I love how a seinen series like Dorohedoro can make me laugh more than a comedy series ever could, especially for a manga. I mean, the main character starts off the series with a lizard head, so what do you expect? It's so hard to have much of any emotion get evoked when reading. Only a few series can pull that off, and I believe making someone laugh is infinitely harder to do within the context of manga as a medium. Having only visuals and dialogue to make up a story and try to evoke something out of you is really hard to do. The anime adaptation, while visually isn't as good as the manga in terms of the comedy aspect, the fact that there is now voice acting helps aid it a lot. I could not possibly imagine any other voice for Chota and the way that he screams and flirts with En.
Chota!
Huh? En? Oh, En! It's been such a long time. You've kept your dear partner locked up in this star for too long now. Yay! It's En! It's En!
Yeah, sorry, Chota. Is that really your partner? Of course not.
The high detail and over-the-top gore and nudity is lost, but it has its own unique way of portraying the comedy. I love how dysfunctional and unhinged all the characters are. How absurd and weird the architecture is. The unique ways that people fight in this series, both with magic and hand-to-hand combat. Funny use of slang and dialogue, and just an overall rampant amount of curse words and slurring of words. But the best thing about Dorohedoro is the way that its grim, dark, grudgy subject matter, I'm still adoring all these characters. It's almost like a TV sitcom in a sense, where you sit down, all these revolving characters just ooze charm. The ending to Dorohedoro is just, it's funny because of how short and straight to the point it is, but it's also like very emotional. I'm glad that it went with a happy ending, because you wouldn't think a series like this would have a happy ending. Just one look at it and you're completely judging it by the cover that, oh, it's probably some over-the-top edgy seinen where there's no actual real story to be told here, no meaningful impact that you can get from reading this story. Overall, I'm a huge fan of the contrast between its dark subject matter as well as the cozy comedy that Q Hayashida just is known for at this point. You can even see it carry on within the likes of Die Dark, her newest and ongoing series. You really grow to love every character in the most parasocial way possible. Check out the series if you have not yet. I know I kind of dived into spoilers, mainly visually, but there is still a lot to get while actually reading it yourself and experiencing it. I do think the first season of the anime is really solid, and now that the second season got announced, maybe the anime is the way to go. But I do think you should experience Hayashida's work because she is a masterful artist, and the way she writes dialogue is like none other. She's up there with Tatsuki Fujimoto and Hirohiko Araki with being probably my favorite mangaka of all time. And just seeing the progression she has since the first chapter all the way up to its end, it's gone through a lot, and it's really inspiring to see the work she's put in. But yeah, that's it. See ya, bye.